Welcome to Marketer's Alchemy, where we pull back the curtain on the intricate world of data-driven marketing. On this show, we delve into the convergence of marketing as an art form and data as a scientific foundation, unveiling the secrets to turning raw data into marketing gold. I'm your host, Kathryn Turnoff, Senior Product Manager at Deluxe. Join us as we dive into real-life case studies and give you a front row seat to industry pioneers and visionaries. Welcome to Marketer's Alchemy, turning data into gold. I'm Kathryn Turnoff, and I'm joined today with Alejandra Denda, CMO of the Federal Savings Bank. Welcome.
I'm super happy to be here, Kathryn. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So can we start with a little bit about your career journey? What brought you to the Federal Savings Bank and what's your history like?
I'm originally Argentinian. That's why my strong accent. And I started my career in retail, actually, working for CPG brands, for consumer packaged goods brands. And I work over 20-something years. I'm not going to tell my age. 20-something years in both global and in-market jobs. And a little bit over 3 years ago, I was offered this opportunity to come to the Federal Savings Bank and be the first CMO. And I was hired as a change agent and to drive organizational change, lead this massive rebranding, and start from the ground up to call it digital transformation. So it was really a great opportunity. I love to have impact and to make a difference. And that's why I joined the Federal Savings Bank. And for the people who doesn't know our bank, we are a federally chartered bank focused primarily on home lending.
Let's head to our first segment, Alchemy Unveiled, Mixing Marketing Potions. So what kind of data do you and your team use and look at on a regular basis?
Well, in today's environment, as you know, data is key. So I think that in general, I would say that we focus mostly on customer data. So meaning how people behave online, understanding engagement metrics, understanding how they engage across different channels. And also with that data, we build consumer segments to understand better what's the right segmentation and how we drive better solutions for different people that had different needs. We also get campaign performance data. So in order to optimize our digital campaigns and our lead acquisition campaigns, we look at different type of performance data. So I would say, in general, we look at things like website traffic, PPC, pay-per-click type of engagement, conversion rates, lead generation metrics. We also look into engagement tactics as like CRM responses, email marketing metrics, social media engagement. So those type of metrics that help us understand better our consumer and what we're doing to engage with them and what's the best way to tailor our messaging, our content in order to drive value for them.
I love it. You're really looking at, your customer from start to finish, like their behaviors and attitudes. What have you noticed that makes someone prime to be a customer for your home lending products?
Well, anybody who wants to finance or refinance their home, we have a very broad spectrum of products. We are veteran-owned and operated, so veterans, active military and veterans are around 40-something% of our consumer segments. But we really cater to all, from people that want to build their homes to people who are international and don't have Social Security, but they have an IT number, to people who need specific help with home purchases. We are really caring for anybody who's looking to buy their homes and need help financing it.
With such a wide range of data that you're taking in and looking at, and then also if we think about a wide range of customers that would be right for your product, how do you take these data pieces and help turn it into insights for your customers or your team to use?
That's a really great question. There's, as you guys know, there's like tons of data into this environment, and sometimes it could be overwhelming. But I think the most important piece for us is to start defining a clear goal in any type of process. Is what we're trying to look at, what we're trying to prove, what's kind of the goal that we want to accomplish. So we start always with a goal in mind, and then look at kind of like gather the data from the different sources. So as I mentioned, kind of like website analytics, GA, the CRM system, social media, consumer surveys. So not just purely digital data, but data coming even from our bankers. So it's a mix of really omni-channel digital data and also brick and mortar data from sales and from other teams in the organization, and put all that together. And we start off working as a team, understanding findings. So there's a lot of old-style whiteboarding exercise of getting all the data, consolidating, sharing, and understanding how we're going to process the data, what's kind of the insight behind that, and then building a roadmap of execution. So entering kind of those data points and converting to insights, and then making sure we transfer those insights into actionable plans.
Got it. So I know that you've worked with traditional CPG companies, and I think what's more traditional than home lending, right? These feel very like solid, established companies and products that probably need some help with modernization. You talked about being a change maker for this role. Can you talk about, from your perspective, what are some of the key elements to help reposition these traditional brands for the digital age?
It's funny that you use about the digital age, because I teach a class in Northwestern. I'm a Northwestern professor for branding a digital age, and I have a lot of experience both on right now on a more of a traditional bank and taking it to today's environment and contemporizing it. As well, when I was in the CPG environment, I worked for Pinnacle Foods, whose mission was to revitalize iconic brands. So I think that whatever the venture is, it's about understanding the soul of the brand first, understanding what's kind of the value proposition, what makes that brand unique. At the same time, understanding the whole omni-channel consumer, how the consumer engages with the brand and the category across different touchpoints, whether it's searching online, whether it's going to the bank, kind of like to a branch, when it is kind of like talking with a person. So really mapping that experience and understanding how that experience in today's environment, with our cell phone, we are in store and we are checking kind of like online. We are meeting with somebody and at the same time checking rates or Zillow while we're on our phone. So how that kind of environment is omni-channel. And then the third part is like industry dynamics. So what's happening with the industry? What our competitors are doing? What is kind of like, as you know, in home lending, there's a lot of influence from rates, from guidelines about real estate. So how those three pieces of brand, consumer behavior, and industry dynamics merge. So when you understand those, what I call brand fundamentals, marketing fundamentals, is understanding how you drive the brand refresh. With the Fail Savings Bank, our website was really, I would say, kind of more old style, if I can say that.
Sure.
It was, on one hand, was not representing our consumer segment. It was 100% military focus, and we have 40-something% of our consumers are active military and veterans, but it's not everybody we serve. We serve kind of like a big group of people. So making sure we represent the people that in visual and voice and tone, the people that we service. Also, it's about storytelling, developing the content and making sure that like the content is consistent in today's environment. Visual identity. Our consumer has evolved. Our consumers are younger and more digitally savvy and require a different tone and different voice. So that's kind of like the second piece of first understanding fundamentals and then understanding that refresh. And then understanding how we go next into a digital first approach. So understanding how the consumer engages with us, engages with the category, how we do a mobile first optimization. So if we are relaunching the website, how we make sure that everything that they do is mobile first, how the home lending experience can be done mostly on your phone, how you can drive sign disclosures, get information via text. I had that type of holistic experience, not just the advertising piece, but like holistic consumer experience, mobile first, and how Carrefour is the right way to engage with our website. And then how we engage across different assets, from social media to our blogs, content strategy, how we do that. So in order to do that, we need to really kind of partner with different stakeholders in the organization. And I think that that's an area that many times we know there's kind of silos, like IT is working on that, and data is working on that, and the CFO and marketing, and they're all kind of like, each of us, we are doing our own thing. So how we make sure we drive that integration between business intelligence, IT, data, like safety, compliance, marketing, and we work in an integrated way, and we have KPIs that cross across those sectors, and we are open in terms of optimization and feedback to make it better. So it's really a multi-step process, and it's a process that starts with the brand, but then involves different stakeholders across the organization.
I love how aware you are of preserving that brand integrity, right? And how that carries through with all the work you're doing to modernize. And then also the idea of just bringing in all those different stakeholders. I think it's anything you can do
it's
to
a team
keep
effort.
Yeah, right. And engaged and keeping all of those things top of mind. I think it's really easy for marketers to lose focus really for either of those things, right? Some of their main stakeholders and like the kind of the institution that kind of got them to where they are today.
Yeah,
So
you're right. It's about like the legacy, and it's of the future. So
yeah,
all the way from like what made you success 10, 20 years ago to how you can leverage AI and new technologies into the future. So that's merging both.
yeah,
So,
it doesn't need to be thrown out. You can just update it. I think that's really something to keep in mind.
absolutely.
So let's move on to our next segment, from nuggets to campaign gold. So you've mentioned that, you have extensive experience with CPG brands. Can you share with us a particular campaign that you might have worked on that was particularly interesting to you because of the outcome?
I work in completely different categories, and what comes to mind is a campaign in a completely different category, that is diapers. So from
Okay.
mortgage to diapers. So I was being part of the AAT at Kimberly Clark, working with Huggies, and we have this question about how we engage kind of like the consumer. What's the right time to start engaging with the consumer? And we got this idea of POMI meaning point of market entry. So when does the consumer enter the category? And this came to mind because that's something that we talk a lot about with mortgages. What is the right time to start communicating? Is it when you start looking for a home? Is it before? Is when you're renting? How does it work with first-time home buyers? What's the right process to be able to help educate and enhance that experience? So since we're working on that educational piece from a home lending perspective, it came to me this concept of POMI moment in Huggies. So we realized that actually pregnant women started thinking about the baby kind of 4 or 5 months before they deliver, and they make kind of the decision of buying the first box of diapers at that time. So unless that brand fails them, that doesn't work, you continue loyal to the brand for the rest of the stage. So whether it's Huggies, that's what we wanted to do, or Pampers, that was our biggest competitor, people trained to be kind of loyal to that brand. So we realized that the communication strategy had to start 4 or 5 months before like people deliver. So basically a couple of months after they get pregnant, people start thinking about it. Women start thinking about it. So came with a whole kind of insight and an understanding of what's kind of the emotional journey, how we can be of help educating that woman of kind of what's kind of like to expect whenever she's expecting, what's kind of the things that we need to buy kind of for it, and think about what's the right process to educate her, to help through kind of partnerships. So at a time we developed partnership with Baby Center to kind of walk her through a process. We developed a partnership with the Diaper Bank and the National Diaper Bank Network. It's a great institution and something that I was very surprised when I heard that over 40% of the families in the US cannot afford enough diapers for the babies. So something that you think more happens in other countries, but not in the US. So so we partner with Baby Center for Education, with the National Diaper Bank from a impact perspective and be more purpose driven. And then with online retailers and offline retailers to help kind of make her baby registry and influence that sales. So whether it was Walmart, Target, Amazon, and have kind of specific partnership with each of them. And it was really successful because we realized that we were helping also other people give her diapers, but at the same time starting that emotional connection from early on. And the reason why I brought this up is I feel that there's a huge correlation between buying your first home and thinking about home and kind of having your first kid or second kid. And I think there's a couple of things in common about what's the right moment from a marketing perspective to engage. What kind of the medium, how kind of you get a more kind of an education and a more omni-channel experience. So even though people would think CPG and financial services seems to be very different ends of the spectrum, there's a big correlation in understanding kind of the consumer insight, understanding the shopper insight of not just how she consumes, but how she shops, and how we can help through that process, kind of consumer decision journey mapping, and understanding what's the best way to engage both digitally and in person with her.
I love that correlation because I think you're right. You wouldn't necessarily think that buying a home, something huge, and not that diapers aren't big. And as we just exited the diaper stage, so it really is a big deal here at our house. They are both monumental, but in different ways. It's interesting that we talk about the education for the diapering parents, and then also education in terms of buying your first house. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like in your marketing and outreach for your customers for mortgage products?
Sure. And you're right. Kind of buying a home is the biggest purchase you would ever do in your life. So it's and it's stressful. And there's a lot of kind of people get cold feet before buying their home. I always said the financial part that we do might be more of a transaction, but whole process is a very emotional process, and we know what that means for a consumer. So for us, educating the consumer is one of the most important things that we do in our team, and because it's really important for the consumer to feel kind of that they can partner with somebody can trust and can help navigate that process. And that process is slightly different if you are American born and raised, or if you come from a different country. We have a big percentage of Hispanic consumers as part of our consumer segments. And it's very different if you grew up in the US and you come from either from Latin America, from some other country, your first time kind of in the US, buying your first home in the US. So you want to understand kind of how the whole mortgage process works. But even for American consumers, it's daunting. It's complex. There's tons of disclaimers and paperwork that you need to sign, and there's things that seem to be counterintuitive, like building credit. In a way, you need to have debt in order to have more debt. It's kind of doesn't make so much sense for somebody that just enters the category. Why I need to kind of get there, be more in debt in order to build credit and get more debt. So there's kind of things that doesn't seem to be kind of so intuitive for our consumers. And it's something that we want to bring a transparency, that partnership, that education into place. So we do that in different ways. We create a lot of content. Our content is mostly focused on the educational piece that we share via blogs, we share via social, we share via video content. We are lucky to have amazing salespeople that what they do is really partner with like their borrowers and understand the whole financial situation and what kind of loan makes more sense for them based on their personal situation. We want to make sure that we make the process of home ownership clear and transparent for everybody we work with. So that's why kind of education is so important for us. And we will continue to develop that, as I mentioned, across different segments, because veterans have kind of other type of loans that are VA loans that have different benefits that maybe an FHA loan. So depending on who you are and what's your personal situation, you have access to different options. And that's something that we always want to map for our consumers.
Let's talk about the outreach, right? We all want to make sure that we're connecting with folks at the right time. What have you learned in this role with the bank that helps you connect with those customers at the right time?
So I think of one of the big things that I learned is kind of like using the methodology of the consumer acquisition journey and understanding what those times are. So an example, we did kind of consumer acquisition journey mapping for general market. And then we need with first time, like Spanish first Hispanic consumers, and then second generation Hispanic consumers. And we had a big aha moment because the process was different. Why? Because people have been in the US, know that they need to get pre-approval before they start looking for a home. So one of the first stages is pre-approval process, and you get that letter, and then you go to the open houses and make sure you can I understand how much of a house you can afford, and understand what's kind of in your range, what you can talk with your realtor about. But for Hispanics that they haven't been in that process, they start for looking for houses first, and they don't think about pre-approval, and then they say, "Oh." Kind of like get excited about houses of different price points. And then it's, oh, I need to kind of get a pre-approval in order to make an offer. So the process is already different. It's more intuitive. It's more kind of guided by friends, by families in Hispanic consumers. And it's a little more linear in kind of general population. So what we do is map that process and make sure that we align content with need in every stage. So there are stages that people need to understand, what do I need to qualify for a loan? And it's very general education driven versus when you are closer to make the decision is, what's the best loan for me? Should I take an FHA, a conventional? Do I qualify for this? So it's much more of a data driven or rate driven. So there's kind of different stages and a different type of content that we connect with in each of those stages.
With all of these data points, and some of them potentially sensitive data points, right? Bank history, trade line information. I know that privacy, I'm sure, and keeping that secure is important to the Federal Savings Bank. What data privacy challenges have you run into, and how did you kind of overcome them or work with them?
Yeah, privacy is a big
Yeah.
issue for all of us as consumers and in the marketing department. Truthfully, we tackle it as a team effort. It's not just a marketing effort. I think that we have many teams involved in privacy. We have kind of marketing, we have IT, we have compliance. So we have a very strict project. We'll bring any type of vendor on board that gets access to our data. There's like a risk management committee. There's kind of a pretty strict guidelines in order to have any type of third party vendor having kind of access to our environment in order to kind of data privacy and data security. We also work from a marketing perspective into communicating, have clear communication and build that trust to the consumer, explaining how we go through the process and how we take care of their data. And compliance is a very important piece in what we do. So it's interesting. It's the first time in my career that I have a compliance person reporting to me in my own team. So
Right.
we work with different levels of compliance. So I have one compliance person that reviews everything that we do and makes sure we are clear in terms of making sure we kind of like prevent financial discrimination, that
Mhm.
any of the language that we use, it's like it's required that any of the language that we use is consistent with like how strict is the process that we go through and how diligent we are in terms of protecting data. So I think that we are tackling in a very kind of conservative way and working as a team with IT and compliance, both on first line and second line of compliance to make sure we deliver and we are kind of like we really take care of what like the consumers share with us and maintain that level of trust.
As you bring this brand into the digital age, right, to go back to your class, and just help it modernize, what tips or tools would you kind of recommend to other marketers who might be in the same boat, right, trying to get their compliance departments and areas kind of up with the times?
Well, it's a big question, but I think goes back to what's the fundamentals and what's kind of like the and what's the environment that we're living. And I think that's a type of almost dualistic approach because I think that like you need any marketer is going through this process need to understand what we talked to before about legacy. What does your brand stand for, and what that stands for the consumers, and who are your current consumers, and how they're engaging with the brand, and who you want your kind of like potential consumers to be. Because what happens with some of the more legacy brands are that you end up maybe having a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're kind of catering to group one consumer segment, and maybe you want to expand that to younger consumers, more digitally engaged consumers. So understanding first where you are and what's kind of like make you unique, and then understanding how the consumer engages with the category and how they're engaging with today with the brand, and how you leverage kind of that connectivity. And when you look into that, is how you do that, and you do that compliantly. So then you overlay the compliance piece. So you need to understand brand, consumer, points of engagement, and then how you communicate and you go to market strategy that in a compliant way. So it's
Perfect.
overlaying all those pieces into the roadmap.
Right. Right. Not an easy task, I'm sure.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, no.
It sounds easier than it.
It definitely in practice we got a little bit of work ahead of us. Okay. So I'd like to move on to our last segment. We like to have a little bit of fun here, what we call the gold rush round. Can you share with us what you're currently teaching your students in your branding for the digital age class?
Yeah. I love teaching, first of all. It's like, we all look for a way to give back in a certain stage of our career. And like for me, teaching is that piece of giving back, but also learning from the students because I'm working right now with like senior students and the undergrad. But the last couple of 3 years, I work more with like graduate students for Northwestern for like the IMC's called Integrated Marketing Communications program. So there's teaching and learning that happens at different time and how new generations think about the challenges of the world that is really enriching. So what I teach right now, it's called branding in the digital age. And what I teach is how you build brands in today's environment and how you use the traditional models that branding models like the brand pyramid, like the Porter 5 forces, all the models that some of us that we used to study 20 years ago or so study with, were still relevant for today's environment because how you drive on brand fundamentals or in today's execution. So once you understand kind of like what you want to communicate, how you leverage to this environment, whether it is tools like AI, whether it's kind of like social influencers, how you think about like channels in a different way. In today's environment, you have TV ends up being a traditional channel, but now it's mostly streaming. And you can like target your consumer segments. And I was talking to a vendor a couple of weeks ago that they were telling me that what we were doing was target by emotion. And I was like, wow, I never heard about this. And I say, yeah, it's like we realized that if you're watching a movie that is very emotional, makes you cry, your desire to purchase certain products is going to be different than if you're watching a movie, you're super excited and it's fun. So there's like, depending on what's your emotional stage at that specific point of the movie and what's the advertising you see right after that will influence your behavior about that brand. There continues to be kind of like different models about the kind of targeting and how to engage with consumers. So part of my class is understanding what's kind of like the brand fundamentals and how you drive engagement with both traditional and non-traditional channels, and how you leverage those channels, not just from an engagement perspective, but from a brand building perspective, and how you make sure that purpose, that like diversity and inclusion, that technologies help you in bringing that brand to life. Brand drives brand authenticity and drives brand growth. So that's kind of what my class is about.
Really interesting, and I'm sure valuable. You're an awesome guest, and I think the class is probably just more of you, which is I can see why people would be interested in it.
Thank you.
We talked a lot about the difference between U.S. and non-U.S. cultures, even in home buying and home lending that you're seeing. What do marketers need to be aware about on a global level?
First of all, it's understanding what we think about. When you think about global, what do we mean? It's kind of in market. So there's global strategy that goes across the world, and there's international strategy. That is, I want to launch this product in the UK or in Spain. So it's a little bit different, the approach to market between global, that it's across the world, versus market specific. So when it's market specific, it's understanding the culture of that market and the type of approach that they have to the category of that market. So if at the Failed Savings Bank, we will be providing a home ownership in Canada or in Mexico, we need to understand what do people think about banks in those countries. And actually, it's something that we continually think about that because, as you know, we have many Hispanic Americans in this country that come from different markets and markets where there's a lot of corruption, that have kind of like different types of experience with banking, that maybe banks defaulted and the governments were not able to help consumers. So different types of institutions. So what does it mean kind of for that consumer almost being a bank? And what does it mean kind of home buying in that specific culture? So it's understanding those lenses and how to communicate and engage with that person based on their experience with category and their beliefs. So when you do something global, a global strategy, you look at the commonality of those beliefs, and maybe there's a segmentation piece. So there's a segmentation based on the cultural traits of the country. So there's countries that are more kind of like they follow rules, they are more organized, there's lower level of corruption, and they believe in institutions. So that would be one type of communication versus other countries that they have higher level of corruption and maybe this lack of trust of institutions. So how you drive different type of communication and different type of strategies, and you guarantee that people in those countries where people don't trust other people, how they can trust you. Trust, you asked me before about privacy, and trust is an area in financial institutions, and how you make sure you reinforce what you're doing to protect them and how you help educate them through the process. So I think that the international aspect also applies to the US with the multicultural consumers that we have and how we can help them in their own journeys.
I love that. And I love the idea of, being aware of the differences, but then also kind of, like you said, recognizing the commonalities, like what things do we have in common, and let's build on that.
Absolutely.
Really helpful. So, what do you see as an important data innovation coming to marketers in the future?
I think that AI is an area that we still have a lot to discover and
Mhm.
understand how we're going to evolve with it. I'm part of the NAA CMO growth group. So we are in the marketing association and advertising association. We have a group of CMOs that we meet quarterly and talk about the industry and talk about different verticals. And I'm part of the technology vertical with another 20 something CMOs. And AI is one of the areas that we constantly share, and we share kind of case studies, we share use cases, and understand how we move forward, in which extent we can trust the tool, what kind of the restriction from financial institutions, what kind of like legal compliance, and how much we can lean in. So I think there's going to be still a lot of growth understanding how we can use AI for predictive analytics, how we can use kind of like AI to better targeting consumers, and how we make sure it's not a self-fulfilled prophecy, because what you put in the model is what you get, and making sure there's like all these boundaries in terms of ethical aspects, and how we make sure that we drive diversity and inclusion also in an AI perspective. So it's an area that I think there's still a lot of growth, and I think it's going to help us dive into data faster and easier with kind of the development of AI. And we see in the next couple of years a world that like, we can leverage more for that like data to insight understanding and help us get better to other solutions. So I think that's what's next. And I'm excited about how we are like innovating and learning day to day.
I don't know how you do it, right? So you have this full-time gig and then you teach and then you're also on councils trying to protect us and keep AI integrity. You are one busy lady.
I
We
am.
want to thank you.
I'm a mom also. Small
And a
detail.
mom. Yeah.
I'm a mom also.
Thank you so much for joining us, Alejandra. How can listeners learn more about what you're working on?
They can follow me on LinkedIn. I think, and I have also an Instagram page.
Okay.
The LinkedIn just can follow me as Alejandra Denda in LinkedIn, or I have an Instagram called Ale the CMO, and they can follow me there.
Awesome. Thank you. To never miss an episode, subscribe to the show wherever you listen. I'm Kathryn Turnoff, and this is Marketers Alchemy.